a tour guide, and sometimes I give tours to kids. And the great thing about that is they'll send you thank you cards. Yeah, I got one recently from a girl named Zoe. She wrote, "I learned that there is a new Seattle." And I thought, yeah, in our 160 some odd year history, there have been a lot of new Seattles. But all of those Seattles have contained in some form or another all of the problems we face today. In 1889, as the city rebuilt from its Great Fire, the Seattle PI wrote that the extent of building going on at the present time is inconceivable to those who are not within its very midst. Well, I think they could have written that yesterday. And I think knowing our history can be a comfort in changing times. We can take some inspiration from the past and focus on our obligations to the future. Now, the early Seattleites thought a lot about the future. This is Belltown in 1910. Yeah, if you squint, you can see Shorties, I think. They brought water down from the Cedar River, they built a university, and then sent the president paddling around Puget Sound trying to find some students. They also did some terrible things. This wasn't great for the environment, and there was racism and poverty and homelessness and addiction. But there were people who tried to solve those problems, like Emma Ray. She was born into slavery. She helped her alcoholic husband to quit drinking, and she then proceeded to help as many of the city's destitute and addicted as she could, including the grandson of Chief Seattle. She visited prisons and took newly released prisoners into her home, and she worked with another woman, Olive Ryther, to care for abandoned and orphaned children. Now, neither Emma nor Olive discriminated as far as who they would help, but of course there was a lot of discrimination to go around. Just as Emma was retiring from her life in public service, a group of white businessmen were pushing successfully for laws to keep Asian Americans from owning land. 20 years later, some of those same men lobbied Congress for the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. The very first people in the country to be sent away left from Bainbridge Islands. Thousands followed with the full support of our mayor, who said he feared they might otherwise burn this town down and bring on something that would dwarf Pearl Harbor. A senior at UW named Gordon Hirabayashi said no. He refused to comply with curfews or register for exclusion, and he appealed his criminal convictions to the Supreme Court. He lost. But 40 years later, his case was overturned, and he said then that if you think the Constitution is a good one, and if you think it protects you, you had better make sure it's actively operating, because otherwise it's a scrap of paper. I learned about Hirabayashi from a play. There's lots of ways to learn history. I like to play the game of who is this named for? Cal Anderson Park was named for our first openly gay state legislator. He fought to add sexual orientation to the state's anti-discrimination law, and when the bill failed by one vote in 1994, he said he hoped it would energize people to go out and fight bigotry and hate so that their little victory would be short-lived. He died a year later. The bill passed in 2006, and earlier this week, hundreds of students met in that park to express their views on bigotry and hate. And skip this slide. If you've wondered what the volunteers of Volunteer Park were volunteering for, it was the Spanish-American War. That's the one Joseph Pulitzer took credit for starting through his sensationalist news stories. But finally, everyone's favorite semi-functional phallic machine, Bertha. This was named for our first and only female mayor, Bertha Knight Landis. She ran a strong administration and did most of what she promised, and was widely endorsed for re-election. She lost to a man with no experience who refused to debate her, saying that he would not answer the questions encased in her pent-up bosom, as it is manifestly hard for any man to make debate with a hostile or infuriated woman. That was him in the picture there. He promised jobs for everyone 1 year before the start of the Great Depression, and he mainly distinguished himself by being our second mayor to be recalled from office and our second mayor named Frank. Uh, so nothing is new. Everything comes back. Problems persist. But I think what our history teaches us is that we have the power to decide what part we want to play and what we want our city and our community and our future to be. Because we are not living at the end of history. We're right in the middle of it. Thank you.
Great job.